Poverty. When most people hear this word, it brings distinct images and thoughts to their mind. Often, images like these. Images of people who lack money. People who lack things like food or clothing, a home to live in. But what if I told you that's only part of the story? That there's a lot more to this concept of poverty. What if I told you poverty also looked like this? And this. And even this. This is me. My name is Jonathan Meisner, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've captured and shared stories of people and communities from all over the world. And along the way, I've learned a lot as well. These people have helped me rethink and reshape the way I think about poverty in our world. And I'm realizing it hits a lot closer to home than I'd like to admit. Poverty actually involves every single one of us. And it's crucial that we know just how significant of a role we all play in this situation. So let's dive in and begin to redefine poverty.
Now, if you've been around the church for any length of time, the idea of helping people is not a new one, but there's a term that we often use here in North America that refers to helping, especially the material poor, and it's poverty alleviation. Poverty and alleviation. Poverty, basically when we refer to that is we're referring to the lack of material things, lack of food, lack of clothing, lack of shelter, lack of money. Poverty. And then you also have the other word, alleviation. And essentially what that word means is helping people not be in poverty, helping them not be poor, helping them have food, helping them have clothes. So when we refer to poverty and alleviation, typically what we mean is we're trying to help people get out of poverty. Now, if you've been around the church for any length of time, the idea of this is not new. In fact, governments, churches, organizations have been trying to do this for centuries now. In fact, you don't even need to be a Christian to have the desire to help people in need. Because oftentimes we'll walk down the street or you'll have a friend that maybe they've lost their house to a fire, a flood, a tornado, or a hurricane, and you start to think about, and I need to do something to help them. And if not me, somebody needs to do something to help them. And that's what we're talking about this entire 4-week series, the idea of helping people without hurting them or hurting ourselves. Now, at different times throughout history, governments, churches, and other organizations have done a pretty stellar job in this area of poverty alleviation. However, in the last 150 years, we have seen a very steady trend in a very unhealthy direction. If you just look at the United States, we are at an all-time high in our spending in poverty alleviation, which means we have never spent more money, contributed more resources to helping the poor. But the amount of people that are remaining poor are remaining the same. And that's just here in the US. Let's take a look at it around the world. If we take what we consider rich countries, all the rich countries around the world, and look at how much money they're sending to what we would call poor countries, that amount at any time in history has never been higher than it is today. However, the gap between the rich and the poor countries has never been greater. We're trying to reduce it, we're actually making it bigger. Now, I don't know about you, but that leads me to ask a very natural but very significant question, and that's why. Why is this happening? Why is it with all the billions of dollars we're spending, all of the millions of people involved, and all the thousands of hours spent trying to solve this problem, why is it becoming bigger? And more importantly, how does this affect you? So maybe, just maybe, all of our efforts are spent trying to solve the wrong problem. We are relational people. In fact, let's open up God's Word and we can see why. If we open up to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says, "So God created human beings in His own image." God is a relational God. If we're created in His image, we are relational people. It does not take a lot for me to convince you of that. You came to church tonight, and I guarantee you there are some of you that are sitting next to him or her on purpose because you desire a relationship with them. I know it happens. I was there. I was one of you. Don't deny it. Okay, so you're probably sitting there thinking, Jonathan, you're not telling me anything new. I know I like people. I know I'm a relational person. What's new about that? What's new is how it applies to poverty and our efforts to help the poor. You see, when God created us, he actually created 4 key relationships that all of us have. He created a relationship between us and God. He created a relationship between us and creation, the world around us. He created a relationship between us and others, the people that we surround ourselves with, and he created a relationship between us and, well, ourselves. We actually have a relationship in how we view ourselves. Now, because we're all sinful people and through the fall of mankind, all 4 of those relationships are, well, they're broken. Now, let me give you some examples of what those broken relationships look like in our everyday life. Through a broken relationship with God, that may look like we actually go about our day, not intentionally, but oftentimes like God does not exist. We don't spend time in his word. We don't spend time talking to God through prayer. And we go about our day as if God doesn't even exist or that we have a need for him. That's a broken relationship. Secondly, is a broken relationship with creation. Anytime we don't use resources or we throw away food or throw away things that we don't need and we're wasteful, we're actually taking resources that God's entrusted us with and we're wasting them. We're not using them, and we're actually hurting creation. That's a broken relationship with creation. And the third one is broken relationship with others. I guarantee you there's people that you may not get along with every day. You might be in arguments with them, or they may have hurt you, or you've hurt them, and those relationships suffer. We all suffer from broken relationships with others. And finally, it's the broken relationship or broken view of yourself. You see, this is not uncommon. I'm sure there's had times where you feel inadequate, or you feel like you're not good enough, or you're embarrassed, or you're ashamed, whether it's by your own doing an action that you did or because of a certain situation. You just feel really, really, really bad about yourself. And that's a broken, poor relationship with yourself. And it's because of that fall that all 4 of those relationships are broken. And what God's calling in our life to do, and what God came to earth to do through the life of Jesus, is to restore those relationships. He came back to mend those relationships between us and God, between us and creation, between us and others, and to restore the relationship between us and ourselves. It's critical that we understand that when we go out to work with people that we consider poor. So as you can see, poverty alleviation has actually some to do with money, but really very little. Poverty is very much a relational issue. In fact, if you look in the dictionary, yeah, I'm going straight up nerd on you and bringing in the dictionary, they actually use words like need and want when they talk about poverty. Now, there might be times that we actually want money, but I guarantee if you look at your life and if you look at the lives of people around the world, money might be something that they want, but there's something much deeper that we all want. We want to be liked. We want friends. We want to be loved. We want a family that's happy. We want the dog. We want people to like us on Facebook. We want more people to like us on Instagram. And we want people to get our tweets and all that kind of stuff. Poverty has less to do with money and more to do with relationships. Yeah, tweet that. That's good. And it's especially true if we do not apply a relational approach when it comes to helping the materially poor. Don't believe me? Well, here's a good example of exactly how that plays out. Let's say you've got a headache and you go to the doctor and you say, "Doc, this headache is killing me." So that's an easy solution. All you gotta do is take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning, you're gonna be great. You go home, you take 2 aspirin, you sleep, you wake up, headache's gone, you feel wonderful. Doc was right. You keep taking the aspirin day in and day out, day in and day out, until one day, you don't wake up. And everybody's scratching their head why, especially the doctor. He's saying, well, he had a headache. I gave him aspirin. So the problem, how did he die? Well, we'll come to find out, he actually had a brain tumor. You see, while the doctor was treating a symptom, he actually was not treating the underlying problem. And the same is true when it comes to helping poor people in our communities and around the world. While we see a lack of food, a lack of material things, we think all they need is a little bit of money, a little bit of food, a little bit of clothes that's going to help them. We don't get to the underlying problem that is deeply rooted in relationships. And until we do so, until we do that, we're never going to help the poor, and we're never going to help ourselves. So what does this mean for you and me? I get it, that all makes sense, Jonathan, but what does it actually mean for you and for me today? Well, first of all, it starts out with redefining poverty. Remember in the beginning we said poverty in North American terms typically means a lack of material things, a lack of money, a lack of food, a lack of housing, a lack of whatever. But if we really look at what poverty is rooted in, it's rooted in a lack of relationships. And if that is true, if poverty is really rooted in a lack of relationships, who are the poor? Well, it's you and it's me. You see, we are all poor because we all suffer from broken relationships. You see in Romans 3, verse 23, it says, "For we all have sinned." We all are sinners and we all fall short of the glory of God. Now, the glory of God is really that all of our relationships would be alive and functioning perfectly. And since we all have fallen short of that glory, and since we all have sinned, we all suffer from broken relationships. And if we look at the definition of poverty, poverty is what? It's broken relationships. That means we are all poor. You and me, we're the poor. We all need help. We all are in this together. And until we understand that, we're never going to have any success in helping people around the world. So what does this mean for you today? Well, I think it actually starts by identifying the areas in your life that you would consider poor. Do you have a bad view of yourself? Do you have a bad relationship with someone around you, a bad relationship with someone in your family? Do you need more God in your life? The answer to all those questions is probably yes, and you need to identify today what those things are, and you need to lay those things at His feet and start to allow God to work in your life to bring healing to those relationships. Until we start by identifying and working through our own brokenness, we'll never have any success in helping mend the brokenness around the world. You see, poverty alleviation is about mending our own brokenness and the brokenness of others.